I bring the tone back up, brothers and sisters, but I usually start my program off and let you look at between your eyes first so you understand what's happening. Now, the ones doing all of this are operating out of the highest places in the federal government. They're cooperating with the spirit guides and mediums. They have their own beastology. We call them the adversary. We call it the adversary. The adversary is a collective consciousness of individuals. Okay? If you notice, they often do things on the 13th of the month. Clinton does a lot of things on the 13th. On September 13th, 1993, he brokered the so-called Israeli PLO peace accord. He waited 14 days until September 13th before he signed his crime bill. On June 13th, 1995, he vetoed the national debt authorization ceiling. On November 13th, he vetoed it at that point. On January 13th, he made a speech to Bosnia. Now understand there will be an interim of probably just days from the time they launched the red list to the declaration of martial law, when they'll start coming after those on the blue list. It'll work the same way it did with the Nazis, who had a list of people to pick up on June 30th, 1934, just before they declared their mobilization. Now, I tell you this, the cowboys told me that the time that they come to get you is on holidays, because that's when you're home. So you don't be home on holidays. I never make it a point to be home on holidays. I find some place to be. When Hitler was going after the Jews, he hired thugs and dressed them in black uniforms. Now, our whole country's uniforms, police, are going to black, with no insignias. When Hitler was building concentration camps and setting up the transport systems, in this country, when he was building the transport systems, he was changing the uniforms of Germany to black. In this country, they're now in the process of villainizing Christians, patriots, constitutionalists, and all outspoken talk show hosts. This is his perspective. Who will be doing the actual picking up? Foreign cops, United Nations internal security forces. Over 30 foreign military bases under the United Nations flags are already set up in the United States, all with the approval of special appointees in high federal positions. These bases are already manned with over 1 million troops from Russia, Poland, Germany, Belgium, Turkey, Great Britain, Nicaragua, and other Asian countries. Why are they here? Because unlike our own troops, many of which are along in the Guard and reserves of 24 states, are being deployed overseas for nothing. That's why Clinton wants that war over in Bosnia. He wants the strife so he can have excuses to start exporting our troops between now and 1999. The people who will be dressed in these black uniforms won't speak English. They won't speak your language. As a matter of fact, over here in Pennsylvania, somebody sat down and was at a restaurant and he was listening to somebody. She's Caucasian, and she was listening to these white boys that were sitting there. And they were speaking Russian. And she, in her own broken Russian, her mother being Russian, she was raised in the United States, she was picking up. She was just listening. And she was there with her boyfriend, and she was listening. And they are a cadre of troops that are stationed right here in Pennsylvania. Russian troops. Russian helicopters. Russian tanks.
Right here in Pennsylvania.
Right here in Pennsylvania, brother. Let me repeat that here. There are more than 2,000 Russian tanks, military trucks, and chemical warfare vehicles just outside also of Gulfport, Mississippi. They arrived, I believe, in January of 1994. There are over 180 foreign troops at Fort Riley, which was confirmed. There are 300 who came in to the Birmingham, Alabama airport on a big white Russian cargo jet plane, in December 13th of 1995. As of 1995, there are over 10,000 plus foreign troops at Fort Chaffee. Arkansas reportedly has making preparations to house 20,000 detainees. All of these spaces where they're shutting down these military places, they have these new, what you call, prefabs. Thousands of prefabs are going up. One of the first places we announced was up in Oregon. They had these barbed wire fences all around there, and the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh was the place that they were actually testing to see what would happen in a compound mentality. Excuse me. Cleansing, baby. Yes. Houses are just already built. You just stick them up and glue them together. Flatbeds, right. Be noticing also, if you're going around army bases, check to see whether or not you see a whole convoy of flatbeds heading into that direction with a lot of prefab houses and prefab apartment structures, because you know what they're doing in your space. Also in 1995 at Fort Polk, Louisiana, which is a U.S. Army base, Russian and Eastern European troops were deployed under the UN flag. When someone was questioned about this, a legislative aide of a congressman who resides at Fort Polk said yes, they were there undertaking broad joint training tasks and exercises. And yes, the United Nations flag was flying, and that is a sign of peace so that we can have this bull. I just thought I'd bring you up on this and let you know what was happening on that. Yes, sir.
Is that where the 10th mountain had been moved out and the post was done all over again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, to structure underground as well.
The Russians had moved in.
Well, the Russians had already moved in, and their uniforms now are like our uniforms. They're either all black or they have the new gray camouflage. Yeah. Right. The other thing also to let you know about is that prisoners will be used. The young brothers and sisters, you will notice, they are now cranking out boot camp structures to the jails. They are going to have these young brothers to be the first line of offense against the citizenry. You mark my words on that. Because they've already been doing mind control experimentations, and we were the first one to break Brian Wrong. He was one of the spooks who sat by the door. He was one who flew over the cuckoo's nest. And Brian Wrong came out into the world and showed proof of his chips. He showed us the proof. We showed you the proof. We gave you a first-hand look at the fact that they are doing these experimentations. Do not have your children in hospitals. Do not have your children vaccinated. Don't take the flu shot. Definitely don't take any shots. As a matter of fact, you can call me if you want to deal with a vaccination deferment letter. I have that service. That's what I do to keep myself in carrot juice. So if you want one, I will structure one for you. I have the paperwork, and we can do that. Yes, sister.
In June 1999, I think it's June or September.
Yes.
By law, all children entering the 6th grade have to have the vaccination for hepatitis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a farce.
Well, they sent the letter out.
Yeah, I know. That's because they're actually talking to the chattel slaves.
Okay, then there, a friend of mine just had a baby, and they gave her baby a hep vaccination shot. And I asked her, they circumcised him, they did all the stuff just like that. Before she could even read up what she did, they just did it.
That is why you cannot have your children in the hospital. That is why you should not have a social security number. That is why you should never have a birth certificate given to that child. That is why you should get rid of your driver's licenses. All licenses. There are at least 70 different adhesion contracts that keep you a chattel slave. Brothers and sisters, I'm not very popular in the circles of black liberation and in my churches and all these places, but we talking and singing this "We shall overcome." We keep yelling about needing our freedom, but we hold on in our pocket a unconscious agreement to be chattel slaves. Voting, having a social security number, having a driver's license, all of these make you adhesion participants in your slavery, 14th Amendment slavery. You don't understand the depths to your slavery. When they gave you your Emancipation Proclamation with one hand, they took you back through your mind with the other. You were conditioned just right by Willie Lynch, so you went ahead with the fact that you could step off the plantation in the first place. You thought you were free, but they roped you back in. Now, with all the ignorant poor whites that supported the fact that we were going to be ostracized, they supported the KKK, they supported the John Birch Society. They didn't know that when they drafted and they made the 14th Amendment part of the Constitution, that white folks became 14th Amendment slaves as well. So now the New World Order was quietly turning you all into chattel slaves. A birth certificate is a chattel agreement which makes you property of the state. You, as one who has a marriage license, you, in an agreement with the state, have made the state a third party to your relationship. That's why the state can come and take your child. You have a contract signed with them that states that they are part of they are in your bedroom. They will tell you what it is that your child must be educated with. They will tell you what to do with their property. You handed your child over to them. When you sign the birth certificate, the mother does not realize, is a description of the property that you're handing over. You tell them the size, the color, eyes, weight. You are making a description of the property. And then you sign your name for release. Every time you sign your name, you put yourself further into bondage, not realizing that. So all of the constitutional laws that you have no constitutional rights. If you go into court and ask for constitutional rights, brothers and sisters, the judge will hold you in contempt because he knows you have the Social Security number. If he knows you made a contract to abrogate your First Amendment rights, how dare you come in for constitutional rights? He sits as an admiralty judge. He is working for the military. You are under martial law. He flies the flag of the military. What's the colors of the flag of the United States? Right. But you walk into his courtroom, you will see red, white, blue, and yellow. The gold trim says that he is operating under maritime law, which has nothing to do with constitutional common law. And I will come forward to this. I'll take you to the next phase. Let's just get to let's describe the disease first, and then we'll deal with the healing part. I don't want to jump too far ahead. I want you to get into the timeline we're dealing with here. First of all, I tell all you good Christians to listen carefully to this. In 553, Emperor Justinian convenes what is known as the Second Synod of Constantinople, issuing a decree that bans the doctrine of past lifetimes or reincarnation, as well as removes all veiled references to pre-existence from all Christian religious documents. In 596, Pope Gregory begins a process of moving Roman civil law, known as black letter law, into England. Laws of servitude to the king and to the church. I'm giving you the history of where you are now. This was the basis for state statutes. You are no longer under laws, brothers and sisters. You are under state statutes. These are not laws. These are laws for effect. If you obey them, then they're laws. But they are not ratified. They are fiat laws. Just like your money is fiat. You don't have real money. That's why they can tax you the way they do, to the tune, by 2000 AD, to $5 trillion. That's your debt. Because your money isn't worth anything, you now get something for nothing, which means you have to be taxed later on for the privilege of being able to get something for nothing. Now, because of that, this thing called black letter law or Roman civil law is what you got your state statutes on, that dictate public municipal policy via private law of trust introduced into English common law by Lord Mansfield. You are part of a trust. As a matter of fact, listen carefully, brothers and sisters, the trust that made you slaves was never broken. Let me repeat that. To bring you into chattel, to invade you and use you, to dehumanize you and take away your soul, to show that you had no history or anything, a trust was set up by the Gellows. And it said that that trust would be, anyone who's part of that trust would benefit from the slave trade. They never broke the trust. You are still slaves of another order. Just a minute, I'm going to get to the point so you can understand where we are. In 1760, Lord Mansfield introduces Roman civil law into English common law. It is this decision which sparked the American Revolution in 1776. Jefferson wanted nothing to do with the common law of England because of the way it had been pointed or polluted by Roman civil ecclesiastical law by Mansfield. Now, you can refer to the letter to Judge John Tyler, June 17, 1812, from Thomas Jefferson. Common law before 1760 did not recognize unilateral contracts where there is no full disclosure and meeting of mind. Now, you were not there at the meeting when they drafted the trust to make you a slave. Therefore, somebody made you a slave by a fiat decree or in absenteeism. Those of you in politics would understand. In absentia, it was agreed to that you were a slave. Nobody in absentia has freed you yet. This move legalized the concept of hidden implications and strings attached. Roman law relies entirely on unilateral or implied contracts, where one party agrees by the simple act of accepting a benefit, privileges.
All right.
You understand?
Yeah.
Get the video and listen to it again. Learn it.
License.
By accepting, exactly. A license essentially is permission to do something that is illegal. So, you are a driver. Now, if you say you're a driver, you need a driver's license. But do you know what a driver is? No. You are not a driver. You are supposed to be a traveler upon the land, because a traveler is protected under the Constitution. A driver, under Black's Law's Dictionary, is one who participates in interstate commerce. Oh, is that what you all are? No, I don't think so. Not unless you, like them, agree that your children in the car are product. Understand that you are not under what you are not operating what you think you're operating under. Now, Roman law relies entirely on unilateral or implied contracts, where one party agrees by the simple act of accepting a benefit the civil government has to offer. The act of acceptance comes with strings of compliant or compelled performance. So your compelled performance is to be taxed. Your dollar now is spent, your compelled performance is to be taxed later on down the line, or some service to be taken from you. Why do you think they pull you over so they can write you a ticket? Do you know that when they stop your car, that is a technical arrest? He has arrested you. If he finds one light out, he says the state's property has a light out. You are not taking care of the state's property. You will have a fine. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a tax. Now, the act of acceptance comes with strings of compelled performance, because the act of voluntary acceptance, even by silence, implies your endorsement of these state statutes and the way that they're going to act upon you. which then creates a constructive trust arrangement. Your silence and ignorance, your inability to see inside of what it is that you're doing, you being what they term the thousand-headed ass, being led, just leave the four legs and the rest of them will follow. You electing officials who essentially are nothing more than people who went through college fraternities and sororities that are handpicked for higher offices to become initiated into a cult of people, black folks, Negroes from the house called the Boulay. Jesse Jackson is Boulay. Vernon Jordan is Boulay. Every governor and mayor that is black has been Boulay. Now, if you want to know more about the Boulay and that secret society, you definitely, when Steve Coakley comes into town, listen to my brother.
That's right.
Because Coakley blew them wide open. He got their whole card peeped. And he peeped on Asa Hilliard being part of the Boulay. All right? Now, for MASCAC. Now, I know I'm not going to be too popular because I was just invited to talk at ASCAC in Canada. But what? Well, when everybody started knowing about Asa Hilliard, but everybody who was, it's like us, he was there, he was preaching to the choir. But everybody now knew. You see? And all of the people who you think ain't part of the Boulay is part of the Boulay if they're in government and structured in such a way. There's some people playing outside of the circle and there are people who are playing inside the circle. Now the one running the Boulay is David Rockefeller. Okay? He has their meetings down in Washington, D.C. Now if you know anything about Washington, D.C., our ancient peoples, the Moors, and our people who practice the high sciences structured Washington. And Benjamin Banneker himself, being a Moor, structured it in the form of our esoteric principles, the zodiac. All right? Okay, let me go forward with this. You are part of a constructive trust, which means you have no rights. You have privileges, and anyone who can give you privileges can take them away. All right? Your constructive trust agreement is your Social Security card. That is primary. The first constructive trust agreement is handed on by your parent. In the beginning, you did not need a birth certificate. What you essentially did was, in the Bible, you wrote down the name of the person, the mother, and the child. You kept the lineage. That was all there was. Now, the state, turning you into 14th Amendment slaves, required that you be programmed into their computer and files so that they could keep track of their property. All right? Now, the trust becomes the third party. In other words, you are part of the arrangement. It was you, the trust that is set up, and the person who brought you into the trust. Now, the trust becomes the third party who can dictate statutes, codes, and laws by its legislative powers. Clinton is in what? The legislative. Exactly. And individuals are thereby compelled to align their lives under them. Under Roman law, the corporate state is a diocese of the national church of the 14th Amendment trust. Listen carefully. Again, let me say this. Under Roman law, which you are now under, the corporate state, which is supposed to be just D.C. and all of its holdings, which is Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Guam, that's who really the United States is. There's a difference between the United States of America and the United States. The United States is a corporation, brothers and sisters. Whenever you see them inaugurate the president, they don't say the President of the United States of America. They always say, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. All right? He's the president of a corporation. That 10-mile District of Columbia, or District of Criminals, is where they function. That is the place where the corporate structure, through Congress, because that's what you are, congressional slaves. Congress sold out to the international bankers under FDR with the New Deal. For $50 billion in gold, Congress sold your rights to the international bankers and turned you into chattel slaves. FDR, however,
was that in 33?
In 31.
31, okay.
FDR, however, left an out clause. He said that if this thing doesn't work, the military had the authority to bring us back under the Constitution. Now that's what's been happening for the last, say, 50 years. That's why you saw in Clinton's first term of office, all these planes started going down. These military planes, whole C-3s were going down. Whole jet fighters were crashing into mountains. There's war going on. The military was trying to snatch back the country. But now the international bankers have their hands so totally into our business that they're shipping our troops overseas now. Now, supposedly I'm giving only part of the scenario. It's the U.S. versus the United Nations. That's what we're told. And that all these places that they have as the places where they're going to keep us all hooked in is supposed to be for those people who are the U.S. So if you're a U.S. citizen, it's time for you to lose your citizenship. Get rid of your citizenship and find a citizenship that you know will work with you. Maybe if you want to deal with, check out Wasatch, or find an African nation. But U.S. is going to be a liability very soon. All right? Now, Roman law is a perversion of private conscience law. Understand this. It is a perversion of private conscience law because it places the private conscience of one or a few over that of the population. This is done without full disclosure of bilateral contracts, and it is the reason why government becomes a superior entity to the citizen by binding him in constructive trust arrangements. Under this, there is no separation of power, only the power of the government. The people are then subservient because they are involved in a constructive trust that controls their conscience, and they are not even aware of it. Now, some predictions. The U.S. government is going to default. In other words, there will be another shutdown of the government. This fighting is a stall because this is when they say, we got to get back to the business of the people. Some who know. Some who don't are crying the blues. Those who know are just preparing. Not yelling, not screaming, but quietly preparing. Government securities or bonds will no longer be a safe haven for investments. The only thing that they say has been keeping this government up, as well as the country, are the bonds. Now, if you know anything about those bonds, these are supposed to be U.S. bonds that you buy, and these bonds are supposed to be the underpinning for security, for fiscal security in the country. It ain't working no more. Because now everybody knows about the bonds. The more people are in the bonds, the more money has to be paid out, which means it weakens the value. The bond will yield, or the bond yield will keep falling as more and more people turn to bonds. It's termed something called flight to quality. Now everybody going to flight to quality. Now you got a life raft, right, and the Titanic. And everybody's swimming in that one raft. Now if one person makes it, the raft is good. If everybody wants to get on the raft, what good is the raft? Now the Japanese own a lot of U.S. bonds. So do a lot of other countries, by the way. Now they are, from what I understand, they're selling off a lot of their bonds to keep their country from going under. The Japanese own a lot of these bonds, and you will find, too, that the U.S. government is going to default on both the interest payments and possibly paying back the bond itself. Now, they had a $50 million bond in 1966 to the Japanese that they still haven't paid off. They're going to default on that bond, which means they're going to have to shut down the government because there'll be no more money for them to keep the government going. If that's the case, then that could be tantamount to the crisis that Clinton or anybody else in government uses to put us under martial law. Clinton will not complete his term of office, as we said, back in, when he became president. He will most likely resign after he becomes obese because he's going to start putting on a whole lot of weight. And he will blame his resignation on his health.
But he is going to resign.
Oh yeah, he's going to have to resign or he'll be taken out. But he's not going to resign for what you think he's going to resign for. Let's see what he's going to be resigned for. He may be cited quietly for treason. See, this Monica Lewinsky is a game. Okay? If you're holding a dress that has 2-year-old semen on it, it's a game. You got to be either, sister, completely unsightly and what do you call it, to be holding on to that, or you got a motive.
That's right.
1. 2, who appointed Star? Who appointed Star? Janet appointed him. Who's she?
Works like works.
Understand the game. All right, you got to watch the game and the players. It's a chess game. Now, I was going to talk about, I'm going to talk about most of the things. Let me get down to the point here. Predictions. Okay, let me just bring these predictions in real quick. Violent changes in the sun activity will affect animal and plant life in the coming year. Very great. Sometime around May to June of 1999, there will be a cataclysmic event upon the sun itself. Violent space weather will begin to happen. What will happen is the sun will begin to kick out a high order of X-ray flux, higher X-ray energies, denser wave energies. In other words, waves come as either pulses that go through like how your microwave work to cook food, or in waves. Those waves, if they're coming at you, just bounce and go around. But these short waves go right through you. All right? That's what's going to be happening to the planet, because the toposphere, the ionosphere, has been eaten away by HAARP, High Auroral Energy Research Project of the Navy. The HAARP that's been changing and controlling your weather. Now, the food supply of the earth is already in jeopardy because the Hopi Indians, the Hopi elders, came back and told everybody what was happening to their crops. This year they claim that they had to trash most of their crops completely and start over again because the crops were burnt. They were literally burnt. The edges were burnt and frayed. Burnt. Africans and brothers in Peru and the places there, I keep telling you, I told you 5-10 years ago that this sun ain't the sun your ancestors were nurtured under. This is a purging sun. This sun has come to clean up the mess that was created in the last 2,000 years. All right, now something is killing the early crops. The elders stated that it was also happening to the second crops that they had actually planted. Solar flares cause an enormous surge or spike in what is known as the X-ray flux, and it is turning towards the planet. Now, the sun, every time humanity is necessary to go through a next change in consciousness, the sun goes through a violent change of its own. The sun is our reorganization of consciousness center.
That's right.
It is the place where all of us get the light code transmissions for the key to open up the doorway to our next consciousness time zone. The cellular structure now that we are presently operating under has been densified to such an extent that you are having a hard time reaching escape velocity. You are weighed down by the anchor of all the BS you've had to deal with for the last 500 years. Willie Lynch has seen to it that your consciousness has been cemented to that particular mindset you call slavery. You can't seem to get past it. This Caucasoid is constantly refeeding you your history because he understands the spiritual potency that you have. He wants you to keep the language of slavery in your discourse. He wants you to keep remembering how miserable you were and then have fleeting memories about how great you were. But if your conversation doesn't change, you will not understand what John 1:1 means. You keep speaking of slaves, you keep seeing yourself as slaves, you paint yourself as slaves, and you wonder why it is that the white man loves showing you the history of your slavery. Because in your mental framework, you create the ceiling of your consciousness based upon what is being taught to you. And you keep getting you get truckloads of this shoved down your throat every day, if not by the media, by those working with the media to make sure that a monstrosity like Amistad is put out there for you to see.
That's why I signed things as ex-slaves. I don't mean physically, I mean psychologically.
Yes. No, we are ex-slaves physically, but psychologically we still act within the paradigm of slavery. Now, we as a people, or humanity, they more particularly, we are being cooked. We are being burnt. The dross is being burnt off. Now, what are you made of that's going to make you pickle like a pig or flower like a rose? Now, the sun's intensities can destroy you based upon what you eat, think, and do. This sun is not, again, one that's here to nurture you. It's here to burn up all the things that are wrong about you to prepare you for the next time. We are being cooked like being cooked in a microwave. The X-ray flux is increasing to the point that solar flare maintains its intensity at least 5 to 10 minutes longer than it would naturally do. The wave fluxes of each time it bombards you, the intensity of the waves of the sun are more concentrated now and stay a longer period of time than they did before. Whereas the ionosphere acted as a diffraction, the ozone acted as a diffraction. Now, remember when they told you that ozone was actually poisoning your atmosphere at one time? They used to tell you that? They didn't understand that every time there is pollution in the air, the ozone level goes up. Because the ozone is what nature creates in order to get rid of the pollution. When it rains, when rain comes down heavily, you ever smell what it smells like after it rains? That air feels fresh, you feel good? That's ozone. I suggest, as part of the suggestions today, that you find yourself one of the top-of-the-line ozone makers. And I believe that I have that information here somewhere in my car. Remind me to get it to you. The planet is being slowly cooked. Gravity is being affected, and with it the weather. As a result, millions will starve in 1999. Not thousands, not tens of thousands, but millions. There is an agenda by the New World Order to crop 2.5 billion people of color by the year 2000. It already started. Plant diseases will be on the rise. All right, they already lost their crops in China, their corn crops, wheat crops. They're losing whole rainforests. The Japanese are tearing them down in Ecuador. Do you realize that meat eaters constitute the worst offenders to the planet because of the amount of rainforest space it takes just for that cattle that you're growing to eat? It takes nearly 2 acres, 3 acres of land to grow cattle so you could eat a half a pound of meat. Okay, so I say that to you, brothers and sisters out there running after your Mickey D murder burgers. You are the ones that are responsible for the depopulation of the planet's, the degreening of the planet and the pollution. At least part and parcel, a great portion of it. Corn, sorghum, wheat, oats, rice crops will suffer the world over. The earth is purging herself with the help of a purging sun. The ozone layer is disintegrating. Do you realize that the bees in certain regions around this planet are becoming blind? That they can't find the food anymore? Do you know that the black killer bee, those killer bees, was CIA? They were experimenting on clone and genetic therapy, gene therapy, gene splicing and cloning, and that African bee was a CIA creation. Nobody knows that. The insect vermin population is going to go up. There is a roach infestation in California now, like none like you've ever seen. It's going to happen here as well because the chemicals that they were using have mutated into a whole other kind of animal. Now we are dying based upon the pesticide. Every time you see a new pesticide come up for a roach, that means that the roach has already figured out in its own genetic structure how to survive the last one. Yours has not. War. The increase of war throughout the planet. This is a reality. War will be increased throughout the planet. The Western media keeps us focused on wars that they start and ones that they want you to believe is the only ones that's going on. But do you know that over 100,000 people will die in Africa daily on the wars that are going there now? Do you realize that there is a movement by the New World Order and the Guelphs and the rest of the so-called the five families. They said that the recolonization of Africa is necessary for the survival of Africa now. So that there's a recolonization process with these jigaboo boulets blessings. And listen, something I want to say here too now. Be very careful about your accolades towards Nelson Mandela. All right? Because Nelson Mandela, first of all, got rid of the one support mechanism that was with him throughout it all, and that was Winnie. When he got rid of her, that should have told you the clue right there. You do not keep, there you go. You don't get a parade down 5th Avenue, Jewtown, USA, unless you've already been quite programmed and been ready and conditioned to be able to go that way. That man got more chips in his head than one of their video games.
They locked it on him real good.
Oh, for 20 years you've been incarcerated by that beast. You're going to believe he's going to come out and then lead a nation? Come on. It's time for you to start thinking, brothers and sisters. Now, do you know that a while back North Korea launched 2 nuclear weapons towards Japan? Now they say it wasn't confirmed, it was a test. It supposedly fell into the isthmus. They say it came down between Hokkaido and Honshu, somewhere in a narrow channel. Do you know that, and I wonder if you understand this, brothers and sisters, do you know that the majority of the population of North Korea is Muslim?
Yes.
Do you know that South Korea and the whole market, the whole financial market down there was set up by the Jews? You wonder why there's still North and South Korea? And there were attempts to actually join them together. China tried to bring them together. Just thought that would be something for you to have. Southern Korea, Russia has 2,300 nuclear warheads already pointed at us. There are over 100 suitcase nuclear weapons somewhere here in the United States. Now, there's a metaphysical timeline for the self-destruction of the presidency. And listen carefully. At 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, January 20th, 1997, William Jefferson Blythe Clinton was re-inaugurated as the 42nd President of the United States. Now check this out. 42nd. 4 and 2 makes what? 7. All right. I want you to understand that the mathematics of the beast, which is going to be my next workshop, the one I'm going to be doing up in New York, you got to get that tape.
Know about that.
All right? On the 17th. I'm going to be doing it at Dempsey Center. All right? And the number there for information is 718-933-2493. And I think it's best you call this other number here, 916-884-7132.
Oh, it's not 716?
Yeah, 716. Thank you, sister. 716-884-7132.
Is it a donation for that?
Yeah, I think it's a $10 donation. Okay, it's area code 716-884-7132 on a Saturday. And the other one is 718. The last number is hard to figure out, but I think it's a 3. But it's 718-933-2493.
When are you going to be there?
I'm going to be on the 17th. Bobby Hemmett will be there on the 16th. That's 5 o'clock. Now, 127 West 127th Street in the village of Harlem. I think it's between 7th and 8th. Right down around the Harlem State Office building. The name of that particular lecture will be The Mathematics of the Beast. Drop into 666. You will understand that any time a number comes down to 6, and you can apply this to the geometry of the Bible, you have the number of the beast. Anytime it comes down to the 9, it's elevation, it's resurrection, it is regeneration. It's the feminine cycle, 9. Anytime you deal with the number 3, it's in between. So, I'll give you the secrets at that time as to how you can actually do it. It's still a developing science, but it's part of the geometry to breaking down what Noah is, what Adam was, what Jesus was. And you'll understand that the Bible is not a Bible of people at all. It's a Bible of principles and principalities. And they said in your registration, you do not struggle. All right? The whole Bible, beloved brothers and sisters, because we're speaking about doing our thing on the Bible on that. And we've been doing the thing on the Bible. Matter of fact, there are some brothers up in New York that I'm doing the metaphysics of the Bible for right now. And the whole Bible is being broken down very unceremoniously because of the Christians, the Catholics, the Roman Catholics, who took ancient Kemetic, Sumerian knowledge and made it into a religious concept. And you'll understand why the Bible itself is nothing more than a hodgepodge and tapestry of some of the greatest works that ever existed by man. But what you don't have is the key. You don't understand what's being said because your religionists and the priesthood, the three great religions, politics, theocracy, and medicine. And they have all three of you all believing in their gods. Yes. All right, these three religions have used John 1 and 1 to take over your mind. I will give you a little hint on this particular tape, beloved brothers and sisters. You have been told in Revelations to beware the mark of the beast. Correct? Well, you don't realize that you already have had the mark of the beast because I am communicating with you through it. The Word is the mark. And once you understand that the Word is the mark and the mark is the Word, you'll understand how your frontal lobe works, how your hippocampus works, how your limbic works, and how you've already been scarred with the Word. And the fact that you've been scarred with the Word and you only know this language, you already bear the mark of the beast. So when you understand why it is you say certain things, or why you were told that this word is defined by this, your whole consciousness reality is based upon how you use your word to define your reality, brothers and sisters. So isn't your reality based upon the agreement that you make from the time you're in kindergarten? You teach your children that this cup is for one thing. This is a cup. What is this? A cup. Cup. Spell it. C-U-P. Cup. For the years that those children are a certain age, you've conditioned them to believe that this is a candle, this is table, this is a microphone. And with that simple indoctrination, now they are taken to ever higher levels of grades in the Prussian system of education. The Prussian system of education has nothing to do with teaching your children. You now are learning under the Prussian system. Now, why was the Prussian system set up? Well, let me tell you. In 1806, Napoleon defeats Prussia, which was then called Germany, at the Battle of Jena, causing Prussia to realize that their defeat, they believed, was due to soldiers thinking only about themselves during times of stress in the battle. Prussia then took the principles set forth by Rousseau and Locke, these are the philosophers, and created a new three-tiered education system. The Russian philosopher Fichte, in his address to the German people after the war, stated that the children must be taken over and told what to think and how to think it. In 1812, Mr. Robert Owen publishes a paper entitled The New View of Society, which discusses the formation of human character and suggests that the governing powers of all countries should establish rational plans for the education and general formation of the characters of their subjects. Plans must be devised to train children who would be taken from their parents at age 2 to prevent them from acquiring falsehoods and deceptions. And their labor must be willfully directed upon the communitarian view rather than the individual. One of his favorite phrases was, "Train the young collectively." Owen deplored private property and he blamed world ignorance and poverty upon it. Owen laid plans for association of all classes of all nations with the purpose of founding as soon as possible communities in united interest. Owen proposed a national system of education, public works projects designed to guard the unemployed against miseducative effects of enforced idleness, welfare. Owens established a commune called New Harmony in 1825. Owens' commune had problems with publication and production, a short-lived constitution, and low morale. The experiment ended in 1827. Now, 1819, Prussian law makes education compulsory. The Humboldt brothers, Stein, and others divide Germany's society into three distinct groups. Those who will be policy makers who are taught to think, 5%. Those who will be engineers, lawyers, doctors who are taught to partially think, 5.5%. And 3, the children of the masses, 94%, who are taught to learn obedience and how to follow orders. The school of the masses, or what was known as the Volksschulen, divided, listen to this, they were taught to divide whole ideas into subjects. Who's the teacher here? Name some of the subjects that you teach the children. Now, the idea was to take away a whole teaching system of unified thinking, dealing with cognitive thought around a whole thing, and break it into subjects. Right. Now, the school of the masses divided whole ideas into subjects which did not exist previously. The result was that people would, 1, think what someone else told them to think about, 2, when to think it, 3, how long to think about it, 4, when to stop thinking about it, and 5, when to think of something else. This way, no one in the masses would know anything of what was really going on. All right? Now, although brilliant, the system is inherently negative in nature. Now check it out. Reason why I say it's brilliant is because if you're a one-worlder, it's good. First, it would deal with Germany leading to mind control programs, because all your mind control programs came from Germany. The CIA was set up by the SS, who they got out of Germany. Most of the Nazi war criminals were housed in the Vatican. All right? Hitler was alive until 1993. Went to the Vatican and learned how to say the Mass. Was in South America acting as a monk, saying Mass, but receiving some of the highest people in the world. The Fourth Reich is already for setup. It's already done. They already have their colonies on Mars. They had their colonies on the moon already. Oh yeah. They went there beforehand. It would lead Germany to the mind control paradigms of the late 19th and 20th centuries. The system also weakens or breaks the link between the child and the capacity to read, cross-assimilating, creating whole ideas by replacing the alphabet system of teaching reading with a system of teaching sounds. What is the new system of teaching your children now? Phonetics.